Yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Good morning and welcome to Plato's Cave on WZZR, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. It's home to fresh, relatively uncensored ideas, I'll get to that, and conversations in the chat room, and a place to get your merch. The station is not beholden to anyone, but does require your support. Please donate or subscribe or buy some of that awesome merch on offer. This is show number 1. The first one, Plato's Cave, and I'll explain to all what it actually will contain. Catch the cave on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. Why not join the club and subscribe to the archives? It only costs $5. I think it might even be free. I'm not 100% sure. But if it does cost anything, it's $5 a month to access the Freedom Slips archives and check out all the hosts' shows. That's the Dr. Zeus word. And there are a lot of new ones. Check out the schedule. There's a lot of new shows, a lot of old shows, a lot of old voices, new voices, and voices in between. And more so than ever, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I broadcast this show, which are the Darug people. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. Now, whenever Dave can, he will join me in this. But tonight it is Mackie solo, and Plato's Cave is a slightly new format, and it's a new show. The content is going to be a bit more focused around certain topics, which I will go into in a second. But as I said, Dave will and can join us whenever he can. It's also open to guests, etc., etc. I will try to monitor the chat, but since this is just me, please bear with me, and I will get to your chat comments when I can. If I haven't, please PM me, and as private message, and I'll get to that as well. There's also a new website associated with this on YouTube if you want. It's called, guess what? Plato's Cave. All right then. So you probably know my voice, I hope, from the Shiny Side Out. Been on Revolution Radio for a good 10 years. We're just about to produce show number 500. So this Sunday coming up is going to be show number 499, and then on Sunday the following it'll be show number 500, in which we launch the fairly long cycle around the hypothesis. I won't go into that too much, but this show is around the reality that we all have been led to believe is real. Right? People say, "Oh, what's reality, Mackie?" Well, it's what makes you fall down in the dark. It's the rock that stubs your toe when you can't see it. It's the neighbor that mows his lawn at 4 in the morning and wakes you up. Not that I have that. I'm lucky that way. And it's also everything that everybody agrees upon. We live in a consensus reality, and this is really important to remember. So what is the gist of this show? What am I trying to communicate here, or rather Dave and I together, and then whoever wants to contribute, of course. We are, and I'm quoting here, this is from Philip K. Dick's Valis. If you haven't read it, please go ahead and do so. But this probably encapsulates what this show is about the best. Everyone who had ever lived was literally surrounded by the iron walls of the prison. They were all inside it, and none of them knew it. That's referring to the Black Iron Prison that Philip K. Dick dreamt up. You should know him. He's, or was, I should say, a very prolific science fiction writer. If you have not been living under a rock, you've seen many of his novels being turned into movies. Total Recall, Do Droids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is Blade Runner. It's explanation as Blade Runner, and Through a Scanner Darkly, just to name a few. He was very influential on the science fiction scene, and he held a very Gnostic. But what does it mean when we say we all live in a prison? We all live in this prison and we're not aware of it. This is true on many levels. and I want to spend this first show exploring the levels. We're going to spend a lot of time going into a lot of detail around each aspect of the prison, and I can't think of a better word to call it but a prison. In fact, maybe more than a prison, an exile island prison, if you will, right? Completely cut off from the rest of the world, or in our case, from the rest of reality, it seems. Only accessible through very limited means, and the means by which the real world can be accessed or reached is your dreams, astral projection, if you believe that is possible, and very few other limited ways to actually get out of it. The kicker with this prison, though, is that there is no obvious way out of it. So you can travel as far as you want in the known universe, and you will never come to the prison wall. Right? You can travel back in time, you can travel forward in time, it's not going to do you any good. Because the prison is the manifold of reality that we inhabit. I don't think the prison is the multiverse. I could be wrong, but I don't think it is. I think it's this very specific universe. And the prison goes deeper, though. So obviously we are, on this one planet, this one solar system, and we haven't, or right now, I should say, we're not able to meaningfully escape this planet. Even the solar system, it's well beyond the reach of most people on the planet. Probably not beyond the reach of some, and I believe very strongly that we have got a secret space program and so on and so forth, as well as the visitors from other places, pan-dimensional, pan-galactic, etc., etc. But that's not really the point. So that's the layer of prison there, layer of prison there. But the most insidious prison, the most horrible prison is you. You are the prison yourself. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, that's a good question. And thank you for asking. We are born into a body, all of us, without exception. And the body is configured in a certain way. I think we can all agree that is true, right? I mean, for the most part, if we're born hale and healthy, 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, bisymmetrical, eyes forward, even the ears are oriented to the front. So we have a defined front to our body, and we have a defined back, left, right, up and down. And because of gravity on this planet, we have this up and down feeling very strongly, right? If we were a spacefaring species, those distinctions wouldn't exist. We still would be entrapped by our linear arrangement of our body, meaning we're facing forward, or at least the direction we're calling forward. And that very simple biological fact has colored our thinking since the beginning of time. Well, since the beginning of us, I should say, in this particular reality construct. Because ask yourself this, why is the human body configured in this fashion? What evolutionary purpose does it serve? I could think of a dozen different designs which would be better designed for survival, optimizing, becoming the apex predator. And we don't have to look too far either to look around. I mean, the most simple organisms, single cell organisms, are omnidirectional, right? They have sensory input all across their cell membranes. It's not a directional kind of existence. Even octopi, the cephalopods, they have no direction they have to go into necessarily. I mean, they're still configured a certain way, but because of the fact that they have 9 brains, which all can work more or less independently, they're not as confined to linearity as we are. Okay, and even other animals or insects, they view the world slightly differently. Certain animals and insects, etc., they have a field of vision that is much greater than ours. So ours is, it's 180 degrees nominally, but on the edges, the only thing that we can really see is motion, right? So we really have a field of vision, I want to say, like a good field of vision, 150, maybe 100 to 150 degrees in front of us. Then we can focus because we've got 2 eyes. It makes it easier for us to gauge distance. Now, people will tell you that's good because we're hunters. And it's good to know how far prey is away. Sure. This particular reality construct. But it does give us a massive disadvantage. We can't view the world as it really is. We view it through the prism of linearity, meaning we believe in forward and backwards. Right? Up and down is dictated by gravity. That's fair enough. Left and right come into the equation as well, but they are just adjuncts to forwards and backwards. And because we are a forward and backward species, that's the way we think about everything. History is linear. It moves forward. It goes up, in fact, right? You start somewhere, you move forward, keep moving forward until you reach the pinnacle. And right now we think we are the pinnacle. Right now we think we are the apex predators of this planet. And whether or not there's a pandemic or not, we should all know that we are indeed not the apex predators of this planet. We're very powerful, we're very smart, sure, all of those things. But a little virus, a little bacterium can knock us back in no time flat. So we're not really the apex predator that we think we are. Now, because of our biological configuration, deliberate by the way, it encourages a certain way of thinking. Our biology makes us think in a certain way, like I just explained. And it's very, very difficult to break out of that thinking. You know, some cultures have a circular thinking model. You know, we rather than thinking, you know, in ups and downs and forwards, they think in circular motions. Also, not entirely correct, but closer to reality, I think, than that. But all of these modes of thinking, all of these ways of looking at the world, are guided by the other illusion which we are under, which is time, right? The illusion of motion through time. So we can freely move in the physical world, in space, if you will, up, down, left, right, etc., up to a point, fairly freely. And that what we cannot move on is in time. We cannot move in time. Time seems to just happen to us, and each moment is a unique event. Each moment, you know, if you go down to a Planck length of time, if you will, even it's a unique event, which is true. But we have this idea of linearity of time, meaning there's a past, there's a present, and there's a future. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it is what we perceive, and again, our biology is what confines us to that level of perception. I think of time as every when. It's interesting that I think of it that way, and I'm not the only one, by the way, that thinks like that. And I'm going to come to how the First Nations people, the indigenous people, the aboriginals of the world, how they view our existence. If I have time to talk about this today, I will. Otherwise, it'll be on Thursday. So maybe I should have said this. This show is going to happen on Tuesday at this time, and on Thursday as well at the same time. And it's a 1-hour show. 7 a.m. Eastern Standard US time, and 10 p.m. at the moment Eastern Standard Australian time, which I think makes it about noon in the UK or thereabouts. But until daylight saving, so in a few weeks it'll be 11 p.m. Australian time. The American time zone won't change. Oh, actually it will, because you're going to have daylight savings as well. But it should still be 7 a.m. For you guys. Right. So that's when the show is going to happen. So we are caught along an imaginary timeline in a body that is facing forward. Okay. And this body that we inhabit is the penultimate prison. We don't think it is, and none of you would think of it that way. How can this be? You're crazy, Maggie. That body can't be a prison. How? Well, you can't escape it, really. I mean, some of us allegedly can. I'm talking about, lucid dreaming, astral travel, etc. Even remote viewing could be viewed as a temporary escape. But ultimately, you're stuck with your body. You're stuck in your body, more to the point. And your body does a thing that is really quite inconvenient. It ages. So you're born, full of spring, into this biologically confining body, into this body that forces you to think a certain way, just by the way it's configured, just by the way it is designed. And then off you go on your life's path. And your earlier years are, if you're healthy and hale, they're pretty good. You get older, you start aging, then eventually something is going to take you. Old age, cancer, rock falling from the sky, you falling over, drowning in a puddle, whatever it is. Most of us die at some point. Most of us. I'm saying most of us because I don't think all of us do. But again, that's going too far for today. And as you die and get older and die, you're full of regrets, or maybe not. Maybe you've done everything you wanted to, but clearly it is never long enough. No one's life is ever long enough. And then you die, and you think, okay, well, I got out of here. That's my escape. Well, no, it's not. Right? This is the kicker. So you've been confined all your life inside this body, and then you die, and you think, oh, my soul is free. If you believe that, if you believe in an afterlife, if you believe in a spirit, a soul, a chi, an energy, a life force, whatever you want to call it, then you go ahead. Maybe you believe in heaven, you go to heaven. Maybe you live in paradise, or maybe you believe in nirvana. We'll get to that point in a second as well. Or maybe you believe you be reincarnated, or you believe, whatever you might believe. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. But there you are. You die, and then you think you're free. You're not free. I have news for you. You're not free. Now, you don't have to believe me. That's okay. That's cool. Doesn't matter. I know what I believe, and I know the research I've done over the years, and I know I've come to believe certain things. And when I say believe, I don't like to believe blindly. I'm not the guy that can just accept things by being told them. Right? I have to understand them for myself. I have to do my own research, and then I go into it. And I do spend a lot of time doing that. I'm very good at concentrating on things and really trying to get to the bottom of it. So in all my years here, I've come to a realization that I think that reincarnation is actually a thing. Now, most of us can't remember it, and that's part of the system. The system was designed, in my opinion, for us to die, to go into some kind of limbo or intermediary state. I don't know. I have no idea what that would look like because I can't remember it. And then we are reborn. We're born again into another body, and that goes on and on and on. Now, some might say, "Oh, that's good, Mac. Reincarnation is good. It's a good thing because we can learn so much." Yes, no. That's. I wish that were true. And then again, no disrespect to anyone who believes that, but I don't think so. Why don't I think so? Because we are a blank slate. We're born tabula rasa. We're completely wiped. Most of us, again, not all of us, most of us, and some of us remember our past lives, very detailed too. I've done a lot of research into that. It is fascinating. I'll put up a phone number you can reach, actually an organization in the States that is researching this and looking always for people that have experienced it. It's usually young children that remember best their past life. Sometimes past lives, but past lives are best remembered by young children. Some people remember their future lives, but not as well and not as many. And that, I think, has to do with the way our mind works and the way that quantum physics works, I should say. Pardon me. And what happens there is that from the observer point of view, like you and me, like you the past has happened. So you're the observer, the past has happened, so you know what it is. Again, that's within our linear, limited timeline understanding of reality. But the future, again, in our limited understanding and the way our mind is configured, hasn't happened yet. The future hasn't happened. The future is an array of possibilities. Could be anything. Some are more likely than others, but the future has not happened yet from our point of view as the observer. So we can be fairly certain, again, from our limited capacity to know our past, but less certain to know our future. There's a lot more variance and a lot more variables from our point of view. Not in reality, only from our point of view. Right? So it's really interesting to delve into this, right? So you're born again then, right? You're born into a new body, you start again. So what have you learned? As if you're like most of us, you're like the vast majority, like the 99%, you have learned nothing. You can't remember anything. right? You might be drawn this way or drawn that way. You might have certain preferences in life, sure enough. But ultimately, you're starting from scratch. You have no choice but to start from scratch, right? Because you don't remember anything. So you live your life again. And maybe this time, you have a better insight, or maybe not. Maybe, you've got maybe, you happen to be born into a body that's got a hard life mapped out for it, or maybe you're lucky and you don't. But if you look at the odds, chances are you're going to have a hard life, because the vast majority of people on the planet have a hard life, right? It's not easy out there in the world. A lot of us have really, really difficult times. Now, some of us, like myself, and hopefully most of you, are living in a relative fantasy world, where we have a roof over our heads, we've got the next meal coming, it's awesome. Okay, so we are the lucky ones. We're the lucky few. A lot of our fellow human beings, they don't even know if they're going to have water to drink tomorrow. So what have you learned then in your reincarnation? Is there some kind of external memory bank that keeps your learning score, like some people believe? The karmic balances. Is that what it is? Well, if you want to believe that, that's okay. I choose not to, because I don't think that's the truth, right? So I think we're born into this world for a number of reasons, and I also think that our life is limited to the few years that we have for a very specific reason. It is number one. Also, I think we only live to, let's say, 100, is to limit us again. Right? I think if we lived longer, we could achieve a lot more. And our minds could become a lot more mature, and in fact, maybe even transcend potentially. Right? If we had enough time to develop ourselves, I don't think 100 years is even close to enough, especially if you're starting out not knowing what's going on. Right? But there, yeah, then you're born again into blank slate, and but why are you born into this world? What's the point? There's certain things. There's certain realizations I've had, not just me, but Dave and I together. We bounce off each other in many ways. And one of my epiphanies, this particular one, was, well, the double slit experiment. Right? You need an observer, or you need something that measures an outcome. So let me quickly explain what I mean by that. There's a cannon that shoots electrons through a screen with two slits, and on the other side of the two slits is a photosensitive plate. And as you shoot the electrons through the slits, you would get what you would expect. You get an interference pattern, right? That's what you would expect. You're shooting them. But then you decide, okay, I'm only going to shoot one electron at a time. Okay. So you shoot one electron at a time. So what you get is you get two patterns behind the slits, two vertical lines, right? That, where the impact points of the electrons are. That's what you would expect. Now, what happened is they turned off measuring device at the slits, and they shot these single electrons through it, right? And it happened that they got an interference pattern. So not two impact areas behind the slits, but an interference pattern. Think of it as like a black and white rainbow, just interference pattern, meaning that the single electron would go through both slits at once, through neither, and also interfere with itself on the way through. So a single electron can generate an interference pattern. That's nuts. It makes absolutely no sense. Then they turned the measuring device on, and boom, we got what we expected. Even the single electron, no, that's just goes exactly where we think it should go. So what that means is that if you look at something, to put it very simply, and I'll get a lot of hate for that, but if you look at something, it will act a certain way. It acts the way that you expect it to. And if you don't look, it can do whatever it likes, which in this case is everything, right? And that's called quantum decoherence. So quantum decoherence means one outcome triumphs over all when it's observed. When the quantum wave is not decohered or coherent, that means all outcomes are, in fact, happening. Not possible, but happening. So once the quantum wave decoheres, it makes all other outcomes disappear. Ah, not so, say some of the scientists. They still exist. We simply cannot measure them anymore. Okay. So, what does that mean for our little thought experiment here? What it means is that this universe, and I don't know why, this is the one mystery I haven't quite fathomed yet. This mystery needs to exist. Someone wants it to exist. And to do so, it needs us to be here to look at it. But look at it in a certain way. We have been conditioned to look at this reality in a certain way. In fact, we've been conditioned by our biology to look at it in a certain way. And then through education, history, things they tell us, things they don't tell us. So until we've arrived, well, here, where we are today, right? An act of supreme conditioning of the observer to achieve an outcome, this world, this reality, of their choosing. Now, who are they? Good question. Don't know. Got many names for them. We do, that is. And I don't think any of those names come close to really encapsulating their intent or their nature. I like to call them the parasites because they need us to be here. They need us to make this reality what it is. And it is a consensus reality. It really is, right? And a few things seem to go astray once in a while. A few mysteries that are completely inexplicable. We'll get into those as well at some point. So that's the rough outline of our prison, which you cannot escape. But you can. There is an escape, actually. Two escapes, as far as I can ascertain. One, our good old friend, the pineal gland. And if you live long enough, by the time you're 30 or 40, you'll have a tooth in your brain because the pineal gland calcifies like nothing else. So if you have a scan of your skull, your brain, whatever it might be, the doctor might find a tooth. Well, it's not really a tooth, it's your pineal gland calcified, right? Inside your brain. It's only the one, it's not binary, and it's pretty much right in the middle of your brain, right behind the area between your eyes, just above the nose, type thing. Just about there. That's where it sits in the middle-ish of the brain. Funny thing is this too. The eye of Ra is a cross section of the pineal gland through the brain. It's astounding. You must have seen the picture online or in a book somewhere, right? It is really quite something else. The pine cone, even in my opinion, the lotus flower or the lotus motif is all pervasive in all ancient monuments and in modern monuments as well. The pine cone is everywhere. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And not only that, the pine cone or the lotus flower are usually flanked by two animals, be they peacocks or elephants or whatever. And if you're one of the initiated, then you know that those are the two hemispheres of your brain. Again, elevating the pineal gland to a very special status for the initiated. What I'm telling you now is mystery school stuff, right? You can work it out for yourself if you research. So that's your escape. You have to cultivate the use of your pineal gland. And that's also how astral projection and lucid dreaming works, things like that, through the pineal gland. At a certain age, that pretty much closes that door. It should also explain to you now why we put fluoride in our water to help that calcification process along, because we don't want astral travelers. We don't want them. Good. They're good. It's hilarious. Yeah, so pineal gland. Okay, that was one way of escaping if you can do it, if you do it early enough, right? And this goes back to my learning, to the idea that our reincarnations help us learn. I mean, if you look at the state of the world and you believe in reincarnation, right? And this has been happening, for argument's sake, for tens of thousands of years or longer, hundreds or millions of years. People have been reincarnating, and they've been learning every time they're reborn or reincarnated. Now, if that's true, how is it possible that the world is in such a state? Clearly, we haven't learned a thing. Nothing. Zero. In fact, if anything, we've forgotten things, right? It's just not a thing. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I don't see it. As some few special individuals, yes. Vast majority of us, no, we haven't learned anything, right? Like I said, it's more likely we've forgotten stuff over our reincarnation cycles. But then, Mickey, what's the other way of getting out of this prison? All right, there's something that is called. I mean, you're probably all familiar with the rapture as a concept. It's the idea that all of a sudden, you know, all the righteous in the biblical tradition would be lifted up to heaven and be allowed entry into heaven without dying. So they go there in their bodies. Off they go, immediate ascension. Now, the concept exists in other cultural contexts as well. The ascension, you know, I like to call it the awareness cascade. You know, some people believe it's a frequency change that the Earth or the vast majority of humanity goes through. So there's that. But so how's that achieved? Yeah, I was wondering about that too. The longest time I couldn't figure it out. And then I looked at the cycles of destruction that we've seen on this planet. And we have clear evidence of. I mean, it's very difficult these days to argue that there wasn't an advanced or several advanced civilizations before this one. Several advanced civilizations doing things that we can't do today. I'm not going to go into detail. If you're interested, the Shiny Side Out has done many exposés on that, many shows. And do your own research. But take my word for it. The evidence is overwhelming for civilizations more advanced or as advanced as ours in the dim and distant past. But they were wiped out. Hardly any record. The only memory we have is in myth and legend. Empire of Atlantis, Empire of Rama, the Lemurian Empire, further back in time as well. But they're all just really just myths and legends. The legends of the gods as well, you know, and how they were fighting the Titans before that, and so on and so forth. So these go way back, these myths, and they're all pervasive yet again all across the world, as are the myths of catastrophes. And the funny thing is, the older a civilization is, relatively speaking, the more myths it has or remembers of ancient times and ancient catastrophes, cataclysms that have wiped out previous civilizations. The Maya had many, the Indians, the Vedic tradition, it was quite far back. The Egyptians said to Solon, a Greek lawgiver who traveled to Egypt some 2,500 years ago, "Oh, Solon, you Greeks are like children. You remember one flood when there were so many." Right? That's what they said to him. And they had some insight. I gotta give it to the Egyptians. You know, they had some insight. The mystery schools were alive and well there. And there's still people around today that have these insights. Few and far between, and mostly only allowed to orally transmit their knowledge. Not being allowed to write it down for fear of it falling into the wrong hands and parasites mentioned earlier. Okay, so there are these great cycles of destructions. Civilizations completely destroyed, even global civilizations. I mean, you look at the stone. I like to call them the stone builders, right? The one that maybe the one that went before us, or even maybe 2 or 3 ago, they built in massive stones. That's what they did, and I don't know why, and no one knows why they would do that, because it makes no sense. The Romans, great engineers, didn't build in massive stone structures. People think they did, but they didn't. The Colosseum in Rome, that's concrete, everybody. They poured concrete. But the people that came well before them, or in fact well before any civilization that we still recognize as such today, they built with massive stones. I mean, one of the best examples you can find in Baalbek, Temple of Jupiter. And you can argue until you're blue in the face that it was built by the Romans. It was not built by the Romans. The Temple of Jupiter, yes, was built by the Romans, no doubt. The platform upon which it rests was not. There are 3 1,000-ton single stones in that platform, and not at ground level either. Not at ground level. No, they're a couple stories up. Get the chance to look at the pictures. It looks like a movie set. One of those black and white movies from the 40s and 50s. It was hilarious. People are dwarfed by these stones, literally. I mean, it's like we look like little toy figurines. You stand on them, and they found more in a quarry nearby, half finished, as though there was a tools down event some time past, so they couldn't complete the work they were doing. So, what does it have to do with being, in the prison and it being, reincarnated and all that stuff? This was another epiphany I had around, well, how do we get out of here? So it's really hard. It's really hard to escape this prison individually, because you really have to cultivate yourself. You have to, become a lucid dreamer. Make the things that. Okay, I will tell you what you have to do. You can't eat meat. You can't drink alcohol, right? You can only take certain drugs that might help you along your way. No synthetic drugs at all. Can't do that. You have to live a very clean life. You have to completely swear off anything. You have to completely cut all of your things to this world. Anything that could bind you to this world, you have to get rid of. Right? Which is pretty much the philosophy, the underlying philosophy of Hindus and by extension Buddhists, to get rid of all earthly desires and connections. And truly, that's what you have to do if you really want to escape as an individual. Now, I think, again, I could be wrong, but other traditions talk about it, again, not least of which the rapture. I think there's an event that comes about when we reach a certain population density on the planet. Okay? We are a very, what's the best word? Prolific species. There's a lot of us. And we fill every nook and cranny of the ecosystem. We just do. It's our thing, right? It's who we are. But I do believe that the number, and this is based on an algorithm I built based on the Fibonacci sequence, is or was 7.76 billion, thereabouts. I've got the actual number notes. Now, what would happen at that point? Well, maybe the frequency changes. Maybe that it's a trigger point, and there's a spontaneous awakening, a spontaneous ascension, if you will. And we projected this number. This was some years ago that we came up with the theory. And that number was projected to be reached in 2020. And it was, in fact. So 5, 6, I think even 7 years ago, I've got to go through my notes, Dave and I postulated that something is going to happen in 2020 to either reduce our number significantly or really lower the frequency of the planet. We said this in, I think, in 2012, 2013, on the record, not knowing what was going to happen. And for my money, and I said it back then as well, it was going to be something biological, because that's the easiest way to do it. It's cheapest, best bang for your buck. And it lo and behold, here we are. Now, irrespective of the virus being real or not, completely irrelevant in this context, it is successful, or it has been successful in lowering the frequency for all of us. The fear it created, the fear and panic and uncertainty, in my opinion, was enough to kill the ascension event completely. Unbeknownst to me, 2020, there was an event planned and in fact executed at Uluru here in Australia, where the elders came together to perform a certain ceremony to raise the frequency, to bring about a positive change. And I think if we hadn't had that negative event of SARS-CoV-2, and I mean other things as well, but that was really the the trigger, right? That was the thing that really killed us. We might have spontaneously ascended. Again, not all of us, because I don't think all of us are of the same ilk. I don't think all of us have the same ends or goals in mind, right? I don't think everybody's benevolent to us as humans, whoever, whatever incarnation we might take. The parasites certainly are not, and others probably are also not willing to let go and move into the next higher frequency. Maybe they're scared, right? But I think the point is that the event didn't happen. We didn't spontaneously ascend. The frequency level wasn't raised. We are now stuck. Well, now, let's see. Again, the next number, I got to calculate it. But the way things are going, and they have been accelerating, I don't know if you've noticed this. They have been accelerating for the last 30 and then 20 years. The 9/11 event really drove up the schedule. And the fear factor here cannot be underestimated. We have been fed fear so much that it's become normal. It's normal now. It's normal. I don't know if you can remember when they first brought out, the taglines, breaking news, or just out now, or whatever it might be. These really in your eye red, big bold letters. That's not a recent event. I mean, that's a fairly recent event. It didn't really come about. And back when it started, it was really only breaking news. Now everything is breaking news, and everything sets your mind in a certain kind of panic. It's almost like a Pavlovian kind of reaction when you see it. Oh, sorry. You see, it's a new show. It's called Plato's Cave. Plato's Cave. Sorry, I haven't been monitoring the chat. I've just been talking away here. So yes, it's Plato's Cave. First show today. Every Tuesday and Thursday, same time. 1 hour only. If you know my voice, it's because I'm also on the shiny side out on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, or Sunday afternoon, rather, for the Australians. That's it. Plato's Cave. Yeah. Thank you, Flippy. Okay, so the ascension event didn't happen. So what that means now, we have to do it ourselves, each individually, right? So we are responsible for our own fate. The whole ascension, the awareness cascade, the rapture is not going to happen, I don't think, because the fearmongers were too successful, too thorough in their efforts. It's astounding if you think about it. If you look at the world over the last 100 years, and the way your grandparents have lived, or your great-grandparents, and then look at the way that you live, the fear and uncertainty that we live in, and the general unhappiness, the general stress, the general unease, right? The ailments that we seem to suffer from, that our grandparents didn't even really know, right? Maybe didn't have a name for it, or didn't come across because they simply did not exist at that time. We live in constant fear. Everything is painful. When I was a child, 40 years ago, admittedly, I was outside in summer all day. I would go home when the streetlights come on. In Europe, the streetlights come on pretty late because in Europe in summer the sun stays, up and the day bright well into the evening, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. It's even still, still see it. No, it's not a replay. that's right. This show is brand new. And my parents wouldn't worry. They wouldn't worry. Not a problem. Yeah, you're out there. They had no idea where I was. I mean, I was living in an ideal situation where there was a lot of cul-de-sacs and stuff like little enclave within the village that I was. And you're out with your friends and do what you need to do. But there was no one on sitting, watching me like a helicopter parent like we do today. But today, I've got misgivings about letting my kids go across the block on their bike, and that's like a 2-minute bike ride, right? And why is that? Why do I have this feeling that they're not safe? Because I've been conditioned to believe that, and even me, who's aware of the conditioning, is conditioned and still acts instinctually that way. Right? That's how bad it is. So most people have no chance. None. Zero. to break out of the conditioning. And that's just one aspect of it. But fear is completely overruling every other thought or emotion. That's the one thing that we have. The one thing that we can count on is fear. Fear is going to come our way any which way, global warming and, a food crisis. And now there's going to be a nuclear war with China and fear. Got to be afraid of something. Got to be afraid of something. You know who's not afraid? The parasites. Okay? The parasites are not afraid because that's what they want. They want this fear. They want us controlled. They want us to think only in one direction, forward. Forward. Limit your thinking to a linear timeline. Limit your thinking to linear thoughts that I control. Noam Chomsky, like the guy a lot. Linguist by trade. Also, I guess, call him a modern day philosopher if you want. But he said, we can all think whatever we like, whatever you want, as long as it's within the confines of this little box. Now, this little box, in my opinion, is the Black Iron Prison, or the Matrix, or the, what's it called? What do they call it in Hinduism? Sorry, I will tell you. The Maya. No, it's the Maya. The Maya means trickery, fraud, or deceit. Okay? And that's the world we live in. That's what they call it. The Panopticon. The Panopticon is really awesome, really. The Panopticon is a prison. A prison that is completely self-policing. Because the prisoners never know when they're being watched. Think of 1984. Think of Brave New World. That's where we are today. That's where we are today. You're being watched all the time. There's no escape. China is at the forefront here with their social credit, facial recognition, all-pervasive intervention into individuals' lives. 1984 is a pale reflection of what is actually happening in the world and continues to happen in the world. Right? We are so conditioned, it's not even funny. And again, these are not new ideas. So why is this show called Plato's Cave? Well, because Plato had this beautiful allegory 2,500 years ago, and he came up with it. And before that, of course, again, you had the Native Americans, Australian Aborigines, you had Hinduism and Buddhism by extension that talked about this concept of our reality not being real. And what he did, there's a whole bunch of prisoners in this cave, right? Or, well, not prisoners. Well, they are prisoners, but they don't know they are prisoners. And they are sort of tied down, and they can only watch this cave wall. That's all they see all their life. They watch the wall of the cave. Now, bear in mind, this was 2,500 years ago, right? When Plato thought this up. No television back then. And all they see on this cave wall are shadows. Shadows, of things. Donkeys, people, whatever. But the people in the cave think, well, that's the real life, because there's sound associated with the shadows that they hear as well. So they think what they see on the cave wall, that's life. That's reality. Now, one of the guys, the Panopticon, that's right. Now, one of the guys escapes. He makes his way out of the cave to the surface. Blinks his eyes, he rubs them. He's never seen sunlight, looks up in the sky, blue sky, white clouds. Birds are chirping, green grass, trees. The air is fresher. My God, he thinks, what a wonderful place. So he explores a bit, then he decides, I will go back into the cave and tell my people what is really going on. So off he goes back into the cave. And he tries to tell his people what's going on. This is not the real world. This is just a cave wall. You see the shadows. Come up with me, up here, up these stairs, into the light. To the light. What happens to him? Well, they beat him to death and go back to watching the cave wall. Because that's what happens to the people that disturb the relative peace and comfort of the people in the prison. Again, Plato's Cave, the Panopticon, the Black Iron Prison. The most recent incarnation, the most popular one, I should say, is the Matrix. The Matrix, the movies, right? The trilogy. The first was a triumph. The second and the third, well, the less we say about those, the better. But the concept harks back to the idea that reality is not in fact real. Reality is in fact a construct, a fabrication, a lie, a maya. And it really touched me when I first watched the Matrix, and Morpheus says this, and it really struck a chord in me. It's like a splinter in your mind. It's like this itch you can't scratch. You know something is wrong, but you don't know what it is. And this beautiful picture of the splinter in the mind really spoke to me as well. There was poetry. There was beauty in its simplicity and truth. Right? But most of us would reject it. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie They Live. I love the movie They Live. I love all of John Carpenter's movies. Yeah, no, I don't. All of them. Not so much the remakes. And in that, there's a protagonist. And the protagonist finds these sunglasses. Right? He's a construction worker. He's living in a sort of a makeshift camp on the outskirts of a city. Clearly, the economic situation in the States, because it's set in the States, is quite dire. He's struggling to find work, and he meets this African American who becomes his friend. They work together, and anyway, so he's this sort of they become buddies. Anyway, so he finds these sunglasses, and the sunglasses, which are looking nothing like Ray-Ban Wayfarers, that's what they look like. He sees the world as it really is. It's a beautiful cut. So the normal color when the sunglasses off, but then when he puts the sunglasses on, everything's in black and white. But the world is not what he thinks it is. The glasses show him what the world really looks like, which is in fact, a world controlled by ostensibly interdimensional or extraterrestrial, I don't know, visitors or capitalists, ultimate capitalists, right? They came here not to not to conquer us, but to buy us out. Well, it's a corporate takeover. The invasion of Earth is a corporate takeover. And then he tries to get his friend to put on the glasses, and they have this big fight. And the friend doesn't want to put on the glasses. Essentially, it turns out he does in the end, but it's really hard, and it's again reminiscent of what happens in the cave, where they beat the person that tries to tell them the truth to death, or even in the Matrix, where one of the people involved in the rebellion, if you will, decides to go back into the Matrix by selling out his fellow revolutionaries, if you will. I want to be a movie star. The Matrix, sure, why not? So this is where we are, and throughout history, these thoughts have been had. They've always been built upon. So the Matrix is not an original concept. Okay, none of these are. This goes back to the indigenous peoples of the world. It goes back to Hinduism, and therefore, by extension, Buddhism, Taoism. Okay? Even Christianity had an insight into this initially, right? The Gnostic Christians. If you look at the Gnostic texts, etc., especially if you look at the Cathars and what they believed and taught. I also believe that the Knights Templar found this piece of truth when they were in Jerusalem, and other things potentially. But so this is the gist, everyone. We're going to spend a lot of time in ancient myths. We're going to spend a lot of time in quantum physics. We're going to spend a lot of time in popular culture, because art usually reflects life, and this time I think that's especially true. Okay. So I hope this gives you a bit of an insight. I think I've got a few more minutes left here, but this is Plato's Cave, and I'm more than happy to entertain dialing in as well. I'll double check with the producers what kind of number should be dialed into, and it's 7 a.m. so a few people should be up, and if you wanted to dial in, then you can, and we can have a discussion, but it has to be on topic. That's the only thing I ask. Okay. As much as I enjoy other discussions, this is a very specific show with a very specific remit. I want to explore Plato's cave. I want to explore the prison, the world, the reality that has been pulled over our eyes. Well, the reality that we've been born into, literally born into. Our prison is our body. Our body makes the best prison. You know, if you understand physics, you know that we never actually ever really touch anyone. Ever. You can't. It's not possible. It just seems that we do. But just imagine that. So we are, for all of our lives, in solitary. And there's the music. Don't go away. We have got Mitchell Bupp and Revolution in the Morning coming up. Donate if you can. See you on Thursday for Plato's Cave, show number 2.